So I'm gonna take you guys all the way back to where everything began, how I met this guy, and how everything came to be. So I met him back in 1996. I was in high school at this time. I was on a cheerleading squad, and I was actually heading down the street with one of my cousins to her house to get something, and then we were gonna come back to my house. We didn't stay too far from each other, so my mom didn't mind me walking. So we walked, and then I saw somebody that was familiar to me, and we stopped to chat with that person. And then out of nowhere, this guy came out with a white T-shirt on and some baggy blue denim jeans. He had a chain around his neck, a bald hat on, and he was driving a gray Jaguar. And he came up to me and started asking me, like, what was my name, and telling me that he had saw me before, and it was just like all so fast. I was 16, and he was like, can I get your number and stuff? And I was like, well, I don't have a number. He said, well, I'm gonna give you mine, and so he gave me a beeper number. So he had a beeper, and he told me just to call him, and he gave me a code and told me so that he would know when I beeped him that it was me. So I was like, okay. And I ended up leaving, me and my cousin heading to her house. And then we turned around and we came back. And so later on that night, I ended up beeping him when I wasn't doing anything. I was just at home before bed. And he ended up calling me back, and we talked on the phone for a little bit. And then he like asked me questions about myself, and I was basically telling him that I was in high school, and that pretty much I had school the next day or whatnot. And then he told me that he wanted to take me on a date so he could get to know me. And so that was odd to me because I was in high school. The guys back then weren't taking you on any fancy dates or anything like that. So eventually he pulled up one night, and I came outside and I got in the car with him, and we started talking. And so he just asked me a lot of questions about myself, and a lot of crazy, weird questions about myself. And um, it was awkward because I asked him how old he was, and he was like, he was 21 years old. And I was like, oh, 21 years old. So, you're a lot older than me. And he was just like, yeah, but it's not nobody's business. And so I was pretty much like, oh, okay. And he was like, so tomorrow, are you going to be ready to let me take you out? And so I was like, well, I'm going to have to see if maybe my cousin can come with me or whatever. And he was just like, okay, well, find out. I can take both of y'all. And so the next day, I ended up telling my mom that I was going to go over to my cousin's house and hang out with her for a while. And when I got to her house, I called him, and he came and picked me up. So when he came pick me up, he had like two guys with him. And I was like, who are these people? And he was like, oh, these are just my bodyguards. So it was like two weird looking guys that he had with him, and he alleged that they were his bodyguards. So, I pretty much went along with it. They introduced themselves. They were very nice to me. In fact, they were chauffeuring us around. And so we ended up all going out to eat to Red Lobster. For some reason, he just had a thing for Red Lobster. So we went to Red Lobster, and we ended up eating. This was early evening, maybe around 6 o'clock. So we went out to eat and everything. And um, after that, he pretty much was like, do you trust me now? And I was like, well, yeah. He was like, okay, so maybe I can see you again tomorrow when he dropped me home. And I was so we ended up not being able to see each other for a while, but we stayed in touch. So eventually we ended up hooking up again, and it was late one night when he told me, just, you can come out tonight. I'm going to take you to my house, and we're going to hang out over there. It's not going to be anybody, just me and you. And so he said his mom was out of town and that he had lived with his mother. And so he picked me up that night, and we ended up going over to his house, and he pulled up in the driveway, and we didn't go inside. Instead, he took me inside the garage. And we had been conversating a lot, and I had been asking him a lot of questions about himself and, what he did and stuff like that. And so he told me that when he felt like he can trust me, that he would tell me. So on this particular night, we went inside his mom's garage. And when we went inside his mom's garage, he went to wash and dry. And I believe there were two sets in there at the time. And he opened up the washer, and he pulled out a garbage sack. And when he pulled the garbage sack out, he was like, the only reason why I'm showing you this is because I trust you. And I was like, oh, okay. So he opened up the garbage sack, and he started pulling out like a whole bunch of thick circle looking things. And then he started laying them out for me, and he was like, "Do you know what this is?" And I was like, "No, like what is that?" It looked like some kind of rubber, and so it was just circular. And so that's when he goes and he tells me, "This, you want to know what I do for a living? So this is what I do for a living. These are called cookies. So I sell this." So I said, "You sell this, and it's some weird looking cookies. Forgive me, I was sheltered. I didn't know what he was talking about." So he said that it was some cookies. He said, "No, this is drugs. And don't you ever let anyone give this to you ever." And so I was like, oh, okay. So it wasn't a big deal to me. I was in high school, times were different, and you didn't often hear about that type of stuff. So basically, he let me know that he was a drug dealer. And so I was pretty much like, I didn't have any, thing to say about it. So I remember one of my neighbors who I was really good friends with, and we would go down to her house. She stayed in the next block a lot, and she kind of knew this guy because she had seen him over one day. And she had asked me about him, and she was like, he talked to this girl, and she mentioned a girl's name. And she was like, because I seen him in the club with her. And so I was like, oh, really? I'm going to have to ask him about that. So I remember paging him and him calling me back and me asking him about this lady that I was told that he was talking to. And he was like, "Who told you that? Baby, that's a lie. I don't talk to nobody. I only want to be with you. And I'm young and I'm dumb. So I'm going all the way along with this." I was like, okay, yeah, I really didn't believe it anyway. And so he was like, "So are we still on? Because I really want to have a relationship with you. I can take care of you. Anything you want, I can get it for you. I'll make sure you have everything. You're going to be the flyest girl at your school." And so I was pretty much, like, oh, wow, nobody has ever told me anything like that before. So I was like, yeah, so I can be your girlfriend. And he was like, okay, so we're going to have to go out on a date again. And I'm going to have everything set up. We'll go on a date. And then after the date, I'm gonna get a hotel room for us. And so I was like, oh, okay, a hotel room. He was like, yeah, you're gonna have to spend the night with me eventually. So I didn't know how I was gonna pull off the night thing. I knew I could pull off like going out to eat and then coming back home. I didn't know how I was gonna pull off the night thing. So eventually, um, he told me the following weekend that he was going to be free and he wanted us to spend that time together. And so he ended up picking me up. Again, me and him and his friend went to Red Lobster. We sat in there, we ate. And then after that, we ended up at a hotel room in Beaumont. And so the friend just dropped us off because he always had someone chauffeur us around. He was never alone, but maybe like twice when I saw him. And so his friend pretty much dropped us off and kept on going. We went inside the hotel room and then we had sex that night. Well, we didn't have protective sex, so I really didn't know a lot about using protection back then.